Hey, how's it been going?
Not too bad. Give me 1 second while I poke fireflies, figure out why it's not doing its job.
Hmm.
Add to live meeting. The one that you're in the invites for. Come on. Because I went back and had to fix the last 4 transcriptions and to get speaker association correct. And doing it the hard way is very annoying. Why is it not here? Software is hard. Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Okay, there we go. Hopefully it does its job this time. Welcome. We're just getting started, and I think it's Kevin. We know each other from other calls. Chris, you're new to me, I believe.
Yeah, Stephen Locke kind of told me about this, and thought I'd check it out.
Cool, awesome. It is very informal. We are just here to talk about whatever's on people's minds. That usually means that when Steven's here, we end up talking about DevOps stuff. By the way.
Yeah, we're both DevOps guys from back at Gap days, so
I'm guilty of this as well. So it's easy to fall into the trap of talking about the things that we like to talk about. But it's here for you guys. So what's on your mind?
It's a small world. I actually used to work with Steven back at the Ops Code Chef days.
I didn't know you were at Chef.
Yeah, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I've only known a few people that were at Chef, despite all of the community crossover that I've had over the years.
Yeah, there's kind of a before and after. I went to work with a CEO that a bunch of us got super excited about, and he actually ended up getting sick and passing away. And then the VP of sales took over, and pretty much everybody left. So there's kind of a hard line between the two crews. So
Gotcha. Yeah. My history starts with the day that Luke said in the Sage IRC, the Sage members IRC channel, that today's the day I quit my job and I'm starting work on Puppet full time.
Yeah.
And that changed the world, for at least for a long time.
Yeah.
And so yeah. What about you, Chris? How are you connected into this? You sit.
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe my brain is misfiring because it is still Monday. But you said how you were connected to Steven.
Yeah, it's like was basically kind of a DevOps CI/CD architect at Gap. Around the with some overlap with him when he was there, and so we worked together.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I kept in touch over the years, and I'm at least sort of recently quit a job, so I'm sort of I don't know, figuring out what I'm doing sort of next stage wise, and sort of flirted with fractional CTO-ish kind of stuff. And so I'm sort of kind of, exploring a bit and kind of investigating, is this something I want to dive into more and become more of a thing? Because frankly, I've not been entirely happy with the last few executives I've worked with. So it's like, I could be one of those executives that, or I could be the leadership making bad decisions.
Right. I mean, if they can make bad decisions, why can't I make the bad decisions?
Exactly. At least they're mine then. So I only have myself to blame.
Fair.
But hopefully some better ones.
What does fractional in this mean to you at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. My wife, she actually is big into talent acquisition work, or she, head of talent acquisition stuff for startups, and she's been doing some fractional work for basically kind of known by some of the VC companies she's worked with, and so is a bit known to like be able to come in and kind of like, take stuff over and handle it on, part-time basis and kind of like be able to, handle a couple of at once. Basically, companies that are small enough that they probably can't hire you full-time, or don't need you full-time or whatever, but then you can sort of like parse out your time amongst a few places and really be able to get to have that kind of low level impact, and be at a very high level, but without having to like but I'm gonna say, but still sort of get full-time work by spreading it out over places, kind of thing. So
Right.
uh, so it could be that, like if it's something that I could work for a couple of small startups. Actually, I'm getting reached out by a lot of startups now, but my problem always, or tend to be with startups, they they're obviously very young and strappy and not flush with cash or whatever necessarily, and like they can't necessarily afford like sort of the full rate that I would get at like some of these bigger enterprise companies to work for. But I can be happier at those if I can. So if I can have that sort of greater level of control. So it's a bit of like, can I make it work where can by working for a few or a couple, maybe like can still get that level of like compensation, but without having to, or not having to sacrifice so much on compensation, at least, but still have that level of like high level control and stuff.
Cool. Just to call it out, you don't have to work for cheap.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing I'm definitely doing now. It's like I got more savings this time, so I can actually. So this is part of the reason why I kind of quit, and it's like I'm going to take my time and find the right thing versus like past. It's always been like you kind of have to go from thing to thing because you need that check coming in, and sort of had to take what you could get. But yeah, could be more thoughtful and intentional this time.
Cool. Before we dig into Chris's stuff, Kevin, do you have anything to
Nothing, Brian.
talk about? Okay.
No, just dropping in to say hi and see what the chat's all about.
Awesome. I appreciate it. So it's probably worth recognizing that startups usually have more money than they want to tell you they do.
Mm-hmm.
But also they are often cash starved and or act cash starved and are really looking for founders. This is the biggest thing that I see consistently is that when you're working for an early stage company or you're talking to an early stage company, that they're almost always, they really want a fractional CTO to be their founding engineer.
Mm-hmm.
They want to pay them like a founding engineer. That is to say, equity only and maybe some really, really low cash if you're lucky, but also not founder equity. Not executive, not founder, but engineer equity. Here have some options, right? If you're coming in as a founder, that's not this discussion, but worth at least recognizing that sometimes there's this pressure that to try to make you be that role. And if you're building a business, that's not you. You're not there to build their business. You're there to support their business, help them through it, get them to the next stage, whatever that is. But you're building your own business too. So don't let yourself get sucked into being a founder if that's not the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I was going to ask, are you saying you should hold out for founder or exec equity versus?
If you want to be a founder, go be a founder.
Right.
And that means getting your executive equity, having your legal team in place to make sure that you're properly vetting your investment portfolio here, because this is an investment portfolio. If you want to come in and work for a team who is going to give you a advisor level equity, then you need to make sure, and in compensation for money, then you need to evaluate your investment portfolio, right? You are an investor if you're taking equity. And that's okay. But understand what you're doing with that. Understand what the repercussions are. Understand, I'm not an investor. I'm not any good at investing. I will tell everyone that. So I don't invest in companies like this, Yeah. So make sure that you understand what you're doing when you get pulled into that, because it's common to, to be handed here's some equity advisor agreement, like FAST as an example. And you go, well, it's better than nothing, right? Maybe it'll be something. But so what are you thinking to when you, hey Diego, what are you though? What so we were talking to Chris here. He's just trying to get off the employment train and find his feet in fractional. And so just kind of, you said your background is DevOps. How do you what, but you're looking at more of the full CTO, the leadership side of it. Um but you haven't had a CTO role before, is that?
I mean, not officially. I've worked with kind of some of my friends that are founded companies and sort of been that sort of like getting the engineering, the infrastructure off the ground kind of stuff. Um, you know, uh, and which was satisfying and was, it's like good work, felt good kind of thing. Um, but also, like I said, that's where like, maybe, and this might be because it was with friends, it wasn't particularly lucrative or whatever. It was more or less like a friends and family rate. Like I would not do it normally, but I need some extra work. And so
I always encourage people to not be afraid to take the CTO shingle and hang it, because
yeah,
especially in a fractional role, because what you bring to the table is your experience. That doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be an executive, in that role, especially in the C seat, or in the technical seat. So okay, so you don't have anybody right now that sees you as a CTO.
no,
You look around across your network, nobody's going to say, "Oh yeah, Chris, he was our CTO over at so and so, and we did awesome things." So that, in my experience, that hurts a little bit. You have to try to build that presence yourself, and I'm not going to say executive presence because that's not necessarily the goal. Um, but you need to be seen as that person, and sometimes taking on some early startup stuff as a loss leader can
yeah.
be helpful, because you can say, well, here I did the CTO job. Um, what's your general, or, kind of spread across your career, both experience and preference in team size, company stage, company revenue?
Yeah. I mean, I've been like the seventh person at startups to like, working for huge enterprises, Gap, you know, uh, Capital One, I just came from a credit acceptance, big auto loan financing place. Um, so I don't know that I've had a like preference. Well, like I said, my preferences, I don't know if it's, maybe I'm just wishy-washy. My my preferences sort of shifted over the years or whatever. I
Well,
kind of for a while where,
you're building your business,
yeah,
so
yeah,
pick the thing that you want to do and focus on that. Because if you accidentally take, you say, oh, well, I'll just take whatever comes, and I end up working as a contractor for Capital One or something, like that again, and I'm not getting the business that I wanted to, because you weren't looking for it. And you
yeah,
didn't write it down and say, here's my bar. This is what I want to do, right? I want to, for myself, I want to work remotely. I want to charge a lot of money, and um, and I want to have flexibility in my scheduling, and I want to make sure that I ideally am I picking up a client, again, for me, that is like a 6 to 18 month type of client. I
mm,
really, you generally don't want clients that roll up longer than that. So within those constraints, that I also like small teams. I like 20 to 50 person engineering orgs. 500-person engineering orgs are okay, but hopefully I'm working with a department at that stage, right?
mm,
And 5,000, again, like I want to be working with that 20 to 50 org, or sometimes even smaller. Five's okay, but usually they don't want to spend money on me. But so kind of, those are some of the things that help me kind of identify what my ideal client is. And by the way, I am still fighting with this all the time. Um, and then, so think about what the part that you want to do and what the size you want to do. Do you want to take them from zero product to one product, from zero customers to one customer? Do you just want to get MVPs out the door? Which space do you want to kind of work on?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's where like, sort of mentioned wishy-washy or whatever, but I think it was kind of like for a while I was like my sort of natural background is very technical, right? It was very on the technical side, solving technical problems, coming up with technical solutions for, this, that, or the other. And I sort of eschewed the politics and, I was sort of rising up, was kind of getting into like, higher, sort of positions, but like it was becoming more and more political, less about the technical aspects and more about political and stuff, especially like big companies, big enterprises and stuff. And that's where I think I sort of backseated myself. Is like I wanted to distance myself from the politics and stick to the technical, and so have not like done as much of the kind of like growing into a those kind of higher level engineering leadership roles, or beyond like a independent independent individual contributor kind of stuff. But I don't know, just like I say, like I said, I've sort of had a string of like feeling like I've worked for people, bosses or whatever, or bosses or whatever, just like we're making bad decisions, we're not doing the right thing. It's really, or like we know we should be doing this, but we're consistently not doing it and doing other things. And it's just like I kind of this is where I'm coming around to more like maybe you should get back into more of that leadership kind of stuff and getting
So why not just go look for a CTO role and start applying?
I would also throw in, to me, there's, it's kind of like to say you want to be in leadership. I think politics comes with that. So, I've seen very few companies in a 30-year career where, anybody in leadership got to really like not have to deal with politics. In some companies it's manageable. In some companies, I've quit and walked away. That's just,
Yep.
So, staying out of the politics. I think if you were to stay an individual contributor route, then you might be able to like just ignore it. But
and
it could be a fact of life.
The contractor individual contributor is the one that actually gets
Yeah,
furthest out, right? Because
yeah,
the definition of that is you tell me what to do and I do that and nothing else.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think the politics they're there as a fractional. Sometimes you can not remove yourself from it, but you come in as a different place. Especially as an advisor, you come into the politics in a different place.
But you're going to be expected. You're going to be expected to solve the politics in a lot of these companies. I work for a private equity venture capital firm, and I go in and do fractional work for a whole bunch of our portfolio companies. And one of the most common things is like, these two groups are dysfunctional. Can you solve this?
Right.
So, I parachute right into the middle of a whole bunch of politics and resentment and grievances and, so yeah,
And
it is.
I don't know about you, but at least for me, a lot of times it's reasons that no longer exist, but nobody ever bridged that gap to realize they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that previous CTO we had, he was so horrible. He made all these bad decisions and we're stuck with it. And it's like, but he's gone, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very much. I find that the politics is a large part of the job. But I guess when I approach those politics, I don't think of them that way. Right? I guess I don't think of them as politics. I just think of them as the people challenge that we have. Let's get people onto a page, but it's all politics.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I've come around to, is where like, as much as I'm very good and, and like the technical challenges or whatever, and solving those problems, like ultimately the people problems are much more, sort of impactful. And like, like in an ideal world, like if I had just stuck to the technical route and had worked at good places that just like they worked out their own people politics, whatever, I'd probably just be like, great, I'll stay a technical person and do that. Right.
Right.
But inevitably it's like more and more, it's like, no, there's people problems that are preventing like actual progress on the technical stuff. And that's the part that really like needs to be unraveled. And so sort of coming around more to like, okay, need to have more of a people role to, untangle things, with, and then, use my technical background to sort of, guide, how or why that is, or, where it needs to go, that sort of thing.
So what have you thought about industry? Well, to back this up a little bit, one of the things that helps a lot, because so we're going to talk about marketing for a second. You probably hate the idea of marketing and sales, if I were to guess.
Well, I don't love it. That's for sure.
But it is the
I know
job now, right?
Yeah.
When you start building your own business, it is the job. So positioning and having people be able to see you and understand what you do, what problem you solve, and who you do it for is a large part of that. So if you just say, "Well, I'm a CTO," okay, that's what there's like 1,000 different types of CTO. If I'm a fractional CTO, great, you're a part of you're some subset of 1,000 different types of CTO role. But who do you do it for? So if you can think about that from a marketing perspective, from a marketing lens, to say, well, okay, I help video game company, I help game studios solve rendering problems, using the cloud. I'm just making stuff. I'm half making stuff up. And then you figure out, well, why is that rendering problem using the cloud? Okay, that's the technical solution. But what business impact did that have? Did you save them the $10 million investment this year in GPUs because they can just pay per hour? Where's the expensive problem? What makes you different than someone else? Right? Why not? Why bring you in? Why would a game studio bring you in instead of just some random fractional CTO? Or let their engineering team do it, right? When you can start thinking about that and think about the companies that you help, the problem that you solve, again, this is the marketing lens. This isn't a marriage. This isn't a commitment, right? This is a way that you describe yourself to other people so they can recognize who they should refer you to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm going to pick on somebody's one pager. They described it as a simple deck that was posted to the Rand's fractional CTO group channel today. Fractional CTO and technical advisor, they do strategy, execution, and impact. They help early stage companies build the right technology. Well, we got early stage companies and technology. They bring clarity to initiatives and deliver tangible results that directly impact your business growth. Okay, but what? Like, get specific. The problem is that we tend to forget that we need to talk about these in business terms, in terms that our CEOs understand and that they care about, and their COOs and our CFOs care about. This is very generic. I see this exact same thing for fractional CTOs all the time, and CTOs too, but they don't usually hang a shingle, right? This describes everyone. So describe yourself instead. Get specific, be personal. Think about what you want, what you like, your opinion, your diversive opinion, if it is, right? I hate Kubernetes, right? I will go to my grave hating Kubernetes. I think it's the wrong solution to 99% of the problems. And does it get me work? Does it not get me work? I don't know. That's a measurement on the other side, but that's an opinion, right? This case, I've found that I can't build marketing content around that because I don't want to talk about it. But it helps me to understand myself and know that I have this opinion. Anyway, I'm talking. So, Diego, you got any thoughts here?
Well, I agree with Chris that managing people, politics is something that we'd like to avoid, but it is what it is. You want to be a CTO, there is no choice. I mean, the dealing with people is a bad part of the business. I like to remove that, but it's impossible. I know maybe in the future we'll have some kind of AI agent to deal with people, marketing, sales, but
not there yet.
If you want to do that, what you need is a well-funded solo founder, micro business that doesn't need to deal with customers, or is completely like B2C, I guess, right? So they just push a button and buy your product.
Yeah. Yeah, marketing position, all of that is a little tricky, but in the past it helped me to at least to clarify the message, especially when you're writing content. It's when you have clear what kind of problem you're solving, the target. In the past, it helped me a lot to write the content. I know if at the end it helped to generate more opportunities, but it helped for the pipeline of content.
Yeah, and content is your biggest tool long term for sending clients, because the whole internet's built around content.
Yeah, maybe not to generate opportunities, but it worked for sure to support opportunities.
Yes.
I mean,
you talk to someone and then they go to your website, or they look at your LinkedIn profile and they see that you talk about the same problems that they're having. Then that trust, right? It makes you look like the expert. And so even if it's not a inbound lead generator, it's still a thing that supports what you're trying to do, and it helps to support the alignment that you have, that positioning alignment that you have with their problem, their space.
Yeah. I remember conversations several times during the discovery calls, sales call. I remember someone mentioning, "Okay, I read your article about the Kubernetes." Now that you mentioned it,
I know.
That kind of things. It was okay. It was not a waste of time. That's great.
Right. Yeah.
It's more on that direction.
Yeah, and it also helps when we talk about, and this is when we talk about content and think about why we publish it. One of the things that we want, especially as soloists, we want customers to come to us with trust baked into the decision, that we don't have to convince them. We don't have to sell them. We want to actually do the opposite. We want to get them to tell us all the reasons that they shouldn't buy from us. And we can, if they come to us already believing that we're the solution, because they've seen our website, they've seen our content, they've seen something that aligns, that, we focus on rendering, render farms for the video game studios, and we help independent game studios scale their rendering farms without having to have large capital investments, whatever it is, then they see that and they come and they're like, well, you understand what we're doing. And so you can ask them the questions, the why conversation, which is part of the sales process, and part of, in my opinion, part of the pricing process as well. Okay, well, why come to me? Why not hire Accenture, go to Deloitte, get them to come in and solve this problem for you, right? Or why not hire a contractor off of Fiverr or Upwork and let them solve this problem for you, right? That type of thing. I'm doing a bad example of the why conversation here, but that's a part of it. And when they already trust you, they're going to tell you about all those reasons, like, well, I read your article about this. Mm-hmm. And this comes from a thing called asymmetric intimacy. The more that someone reads your opinions, the more that they believe that you understand, and if their opinions fit the space that you need, right, it builds that trust. And just like if a friend refers you to, Steven says, hey, I've got this great guy, Chris, and he can solve this problem for you. That if Steven's just created a bridge of trust for you, he's extended whatever trust he has, that they have in him, to you. Your content will do the same thing without having to have the personal referral. It can assist with the personal referral. It can do all those other things, but it can build that trust once they discover it. And over time, it can be your biggest lead generation tool. If you build it and support it and grow it, but it's not a 1 month thing. It's not a 6 month thing. It's over time.
Yeah, I agree.
But I was going to ask, and I got a little distracted. I distracted myself. What who do you imagine your first client would be, Chris?
Well, I mean, given kind of just starting out, I would sort of think of maybe like you sort of talked about like small startups that just basically need like need that technical help to get going kind of thing. Like you probably, they're not, either either can afford or can't, either via either cash or via sort of, what do you call it? Cachet, cash or cachet, someone who's already like a CTO out there or an established CTO. They need somebody to help get things going. So I guess maybe like a pre-seed kind of like startup would need just like, need technical help to get off.
So how would you identify them? How would you find them?
Not about that much because I'm just getting started on this. But and certainly I do see some, sort of ads out there or whatever, kind of job searchy kind of stuff. And I feel like I've talked to some over the years that it was kind of like when I wasn't as interested in that, but but now I could kind of leverage that. But also like I say, I've got friends who are founders. I've got friends, I guess I know some connections with like VC areas or kind of the VC world or whatever. I've been attending a bit more of like kind of founder event kind of things, so I'm kind of trying to network a bit more in those areas. So
okay, good.
Those kinds of things.
Okay. That's,
and I think you said I may have to, if I'm, continue down the route, take one or something, maybe more of a loss leader kind of thing of what getting into that space. And,
just make sure you put some boundaries on it. Protect your time, make sure you have an out, say we'll do this for 3 months, do this for 6 months, whatever you're comfortable with, but make sure you put that on paper, establish it up front so you don't find yourself mentally trapped. Yeah, well, I've got to support them. I got to get them to the next point. I've got my equity after all, right? Because then you just end up being an employee.
Right.
So thinking of that, you said some founders. Have you asked any of them? I mean, I know you said you're early, but still, have you asked anybody and said, hey, do you know somebody that needs a CTO? A fractional CTO?
Yeah, no,
starting point.
Not this go around yet, but yeah.
It's vague, but it's a start. But these are people who know you, or at least a little bit know you, and say, I'm starting out as a fractional CTO. That's usually where people find their first clients. People they know, they've worked with, their network. Reach out to them. Be specific. If you can, the more specific you can get, the better, from a bunch of other reasons. But actually ask. That's the hard part. I have trouble with, and other people seem to have trouble with sometimes, especially folks from our kind of space, the DevOps and infrastructure. And I was never a CTO space. It feels a little hard sometimes. Your imposter syndrome fires up a lot. And it's hard to say, hey, Steven, we work together at Gap. I'm looking for a fractional CTO role. Do you know anybody? Right? Ask them. But just ask. And non-response is not a no. The only thing that's a no is a no. And the only thing that don't contact me again is a don't contact me again. Right? When we're doing outreach of any sort, networking outreach, any kind of sales outreach, whatever, remembering that no is no. That's the only one. Everybody's busy. You can reach out and they may respond and then they forget they're busy. They had an outage. They went to Disney this weekend, whatever. They completely forgot. So it's up to us to do our own follow-up. And you can be as annoying as you want to be. until they say, "Okay, please stop." But don't be afraid to annoy them, especially people you already know.
Yeah.
Right? Get comfortable with it. I like to recommend people to start talking to people they already know just because it's comfortable, but also start trying to figure out how to mix in people you don't know. And that usually comes from asking them for people you can talk to, and then you start talking to people you don't know.
Right. You know, I would say like the founders I know, they're all good friends. So like none of them are gonna, like be annoyed or whatever for for the question.
Right. Exactly. And as long as you're not doing spammy cold outreach.
I need to run and get the door. I'll be right.
Oh yeah, go for it. Go. So Diego, Kevin, what's going on now? We've been talking about Chris all this time.
Not a lot, just too many portfolio companies in crisis.
But
Kevin,
I need to figure out how to work with the companies you work with.
Yeah.
I've been trying to pivot to the sort of the PE, the post-acquisition side of things,
Yeah.
And I say pivot, and yet it's what most of my career has been, one way or the other. So it's not really a pivot. It's just that I suffer from this problem of not knowing how to reach out and talk to people in the investment world.
Yeah. Are you when it comes to like DevOps skill set, are you more of an AWS person or a Azure person, or you know them both?
AWS. I have almost no experience with Azure.
Yeah. Yeah, that sucks because we've been buying too many companies that are Azure based and too big of a lift to just move them.
Right. I if they're Linux and Azure, I feel like I can help. If they're Windows and Azure, I can advise.
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked at, seen enough, and I understand the general ecosystem, but it's like I'm not going to build I'm not going to come in and build in that ecosystem.
Yeah, well, one of my game plans in all of these Windows shops is always let's get to .NET 8 or later. Let's run it on Linux and let's basically move to Postgres and stop paying the Microsoft tax.
Yes,
business issues all drive, but I'm not a big.
But usually those business issues come from we can't find people and we don't want to spend money. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
Then here's the project that will help with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the teams I worked with had moved out of Azure, half moved out of Azure. They still used ADO for all the ticket tracking and everything else. But everything else had moved out of Azure, and their Microsoft account was broken, so they couldn't use their own domain. So they all had to create Hotmail accounts to be able to log into ADO.
Oh my God.
And when they moved out of Azure, they put SQL Server on a Linux machine. It's on Linux.
Yeah.
It running on an EC2 instance. And like 6-7 years ago, they'd done that. And no one had the license key. And this is a database that goes down daily, too. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Let's just fix this.
I had a fun one yesterday Friday, when one of our portfolio companies was telling me about how they had moved to GitHub from Azure DevOps. And I was like, cool, let's get in there and I'll show you this thing called Dependabot. Let's turn it on.
Yeah.
It turns out they didn't understand. In Azure DevOps, you can use the old Team Foundation Server protocol, or you can use the Git protocol. That's not GitHub. So that's kind of the level of expertise I get to work with.
Yes, that is challenging. Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, we interrupted, or the door interrupted you.
Oh, no worries. Not all about me here. So
you're the one that brought a problem. So,
I had a quick one for you, David.
Yeah.
One of the things, a pattern that I run into over and over again, coming in as a fractional when a report goes, and if you hit this all the time, is that, we've got big ball of mud, and, the engineering team that built the big ball of mud is not the team usually that can fix it.
Yep.
So, I come in, parachute in, everybody's really excited. Let's get some velocity going. And immediately I slam into how much of a crazy time suck hiring is, even with pretty good recruiters. I want to be like the final interview. And you put that together within the PE world and the kind of search investing we do. Quite often we'll put an operator in as the new CEO, and it'll be his or her first um first rodeo as a CEO. And a thing that we hit a lot is that they get really unrealistic expectations about what you get for $200,000 or what you get for $300,000. And they start vetoing people that I'm like, this person is a steal at
Yeah.
this price. And they start wanting to veto it. And then, I end up wasting a lot of time, building up the team before we really get any forward, velocity. Of course, you're fixing up a whole lot of like low hanging fruit along the way, teaching them what source control is in some of these kind of companies, like all over the gamut. What I'm gonna try and do now, and I've actually talked to a few contracting firms about it, is, when we're buying a company, very early in the diligence process, I'll send out a questionnaire, and I get it from the response of the questionnaire, how often do you deploy? It's the DORA stuff. How often do you deploy? Do you track these metrics? What's your stack? What's your software development life cycle? When I get that back, I know if we're walking into a mess or not. I like, no, that's really bad. And then we do due diligence itself, usually 2 weeks before it closes, and maybe a month before it closes. And at the end of the diligence, I know exactly what we're walking into. So what I'm trying to figure out, if I can work out, is get 2 or 3 really good contracting firms out there, with the idea that as we get close to the close, I tell them I need 3 super senior people in stack.
Yep.
And I need a project manager, and, probably somebody that knows actually what QA is at the same time. With the idea of, I start with like a team of about 5 contractors day one. They get in there and they just start fixing stuff.
Yep. This was
And I
going to be
don't-
100% my
move over-
recommendation. Yes.
Yeah, and I just move over to, I have a lot more time for hiring. I don't have to babysit the engineering team as much if we have people that actually know how to write software in there. So trying to work that out. The problem there is, you can't ask small contracting shops to keep people on the bench for you. It's got to be like, I have about a 2 week lead time. Can you pull people together?
Yeah.
I don't know, have you played that kind of game?
I haven't directly. I've suggested and pointed out agencies for people to pull from. Diego happens to be involved in was involved in one of the projects I worked on in the past. Where like that idea of bringing in a contract shop to not to build your long-term team, not to fix your long-term project, but to get some boots on the ground, that you have people who can execute while you figure out what you need to do with the people that you have, whether you need to train them, we take this contract team and make them pair with them or whatever. But these are just operators who know how to come in and do the thing they're told.
Yeah.
I think that having that available is one way or the other is a very powerful tool. I've been able to use that a couple of times. And that's really, really, really like useful.
Yeah, I just need to find the right teams.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, I see a lot of .NET, lesser, some Node, a lot of PHP companies are out there. Not very much Java, some Python. Don't get to see any of the fun languages. I don't ever see Go or much Node or anything that
Right. Yeah.
is interesting. So yeah, I need just like get 2 or 3 contracting firms that are specialists in each of our stacks. So I've got someone standing by to jump in.
Yeah. That's my recommendation. I mean, I know I know a company that's, fairly PHP oriented, that they've usually got people on staff because most of the projects that they do aren't full time. They're not a staff aug team.
Yeah.
Right. They're a project team. So they've usually got people because they can shift around within their project schedule and start taking on work.
Yeah.
And I think that's one approach for, say, come and do a 6-month, let's just get some work done. Let's handle that. Okay, we need to take this SQL server that's sitting here on a Linux box that nobody even knows, doesn't have any backups. Let's just bite the expensive bullet and migrate it into RDS for now.
Yeah.
Right? Say we're going to have a 12-month hit on this, get it done. Then on the other side of that, start working on migration to Postgres or whatever. But then you get to do that with a plan. Or tackle the migration to Postgres because they're already on, RDS or the equivalent or whatever. Having an agency a dev studio, right, a project focused studio might be easier than doing that.
Knowing you that are not fully utilized, I'd appreciate introductions. I've been working, I've been having conversations with a bunch of different firms so that I've got enough people interested to put this together, the next deal that closes, which will probably be a Ruby on Rails app in a month or two. So I've got one company here in Seattle. There's a great company called Facet.
Okay.
That's hardcore Rails people. So hopefully I'll be able to use them.
I think, didn't I talk to a Ruby shop? They were Eastern European Ruby shop recently. To go back and dig through my notes. And they were, doing I find that as soon as I hung a fractional CTO shingle, dev shops come and like, hey, can you? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they're not good to add to the list. Just don't know anything about them. I haven't worked with them, but that's kind of always the case too. That's the hard part. I mean, it's why we like employees. It's why we like to manage our own teams, right? That we get more control over it. But sometimes in that early, especially in that transition phase, just bringing them in as a disruption.
Yeah. And the problem that I've had in a couple of companies I've gone into is that literally like getting the team built out to really get going takes 6 months. And that's just 6 months of loss of velocity.
Yes.
Kind of doing whatever the crappy way they were building stuff, just say, we'll fix some low hanging fruit, but just keep going. And then there's always and now I'd like you to train your replacement. It's like, I just want stuff to be happening while I'm putting everything else together.
Right. I'm curious on that, like the training your replacement thing, because a lot of times they're the wrong engineering team for the next stage of the org, and that's miserable. We talk about people and politics, right? That whole idea of, okay, I'm the guy who has to come in and tell you eventually. Well, first I have to tell you we're not firing you because we need to make sure you stick around.
Yeah.
But then eventually we have to say, sorry, we're letting this whole team go one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, what often happens is you have these insanely tech debt heavy code bases with no documentation, no unit tests, and it's like Bob is the only one that understands the billing side of things, and Fred is the only one that understands the integrations or inventory. Nobody has documented anything, so a lot of times that's just a really big sort of documentation and what I'll say is we got to break these silos down. I want like 3 people that know every module that I can go to. And, of those people, one is a contractor that's getting up to speed.
Right. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, LLMs help quite a bit, on this kind of stuff, like just, document, tell me what this thing is doing, tell me what kind of functionality we have here. Bane of my existence is the .NET code bases lag quite a bit in LLMs behind, Python, Java, Node, PHP, simply because so much .NET is closed source. There's not nearly as
I'm gonna
much.
say, I wonder.
And then a lot of it is also crappy code.
A lot of the documentation has always been public.
Yeah.
But you're right. All the example stuff, all the sample code is there's not a lot of huge open source projects that do it.
Yeah.
I've been tempted to sit down and do some BrightScript projects, Roku's internal language, and I'm like, I know it's gonna suck.
Yeah. We've had some things like one of the companies we went into had 1,500 Snowflake customers. And the way they got to 1,500 Snowflake customers is every office that bought, they would cut and paste the entire code base for the previous customer into a new repo and start changing it in the new repo. And one of the things we actually were able to do with the local LLMs, Olama, uh, we were able to go in and basically analyze every one of these 1,500 projects and say, like, how different are they? Can you
Right.
show me, like, what
Because then it's just looking at text. It's not even about the code.
Yeah, and every one of those, like how far off. And luckily, what had happened is that it would be a cut and paste and a couple of string changes. We would change, Bob's office to Fred's office and, maybe a CSS change. It turned out, luckily, it wasn't 1,500 completely unique code bases. It was about 10% of 1,500
Yep.
unique code bases. So things like that has been really awesome. And
Things
then,
that it was all right for the first 1, 2, 3 because you're doing customer acquisition, you're doing quick velocity, we get something out the door. But then you should have said number 4,
yeah.
let's plan for.
You have a core code base if you have to have,
Yep.
some sort of overrides.
Yeah, we'll take number 3 and we'll go port 1, 2, and 3 back into it and make
Yeah.
variable places. Now that we've seen the changes 3 or 4 times, we know what we need.
Yeah.
One of the things I've often seen is that, like something like that, the engineer that wrote that original framework isn't there, and so these guys don't even know how the thing works. And now they're running 1,500 copies of it, but no one actually ever learned how it worked. All they did was just change the things they needed to.
Yeah.
And that whole that you have the founding team that built the thing. Somebody then it evolved, and then by the time they're ready to sell, you're just left with the interns that never quit.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Or, what we get a lot is like the founder taught themselves Visual Basic,
Right.
and started writing some software and accidentally sold it to a couple of people. And before you know it, they have 300 versions of their app.
This is the next generation of this problem though now, because now it's I didn't teach myself Visual Basic. I just sat down with an LLM and
I know. We're
code hacked me out of school.
We're gonna be in so much of a worse state.
And yet for us, it's going to be better. It should be better if we can figure out how to position ourselves.
It's a license to print money fixing these things. Yeah, if you get good at it.
Yeah. If they can figure out how to make money doing it, then we can figure out how to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem is the ones who want to fix it but aren't making any money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, most of them, you'd be surprised at how many like complete house of card, total disaster code bases are in a company that is literally printing money. I mean, they are doing really, really well.
Yep.
And, they never needed to stop and fix the system up until now when, suddenly they've got, customer plus one and everything's starting to fall over.
Yep.
I need to jump. I got a 1:00 interview and I will need to hit the restroom before it. But good, yeah, nice to
Thanks.
catch.
Good seeing you, Gavin.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye. Hey, Chris.
Hey.
So, did I help any? Did the conversation help any?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Food for thought kind of stuff.
What's your next step?
I think I would like to talk to some of my founder friends as far as like really exploring this, but I'm also getting like reach outs from already job interviews and things, and this is kind of where it's like those are sort of safe and your regular full time jobs. They're safe. They tend to pay more. It's sort of but
What's your runway? When do you have to make a decision?
When do I have to make a decision?
Yeah.
Honestly, I really probably don't for several months. So that's kind of why I'm sort of like, I don't feel like I should turn down those interviews in case one of them does turn out to be like,
Sure. And you can convert those to part-time fractional roles too. That's not possible. And I've done that multiple times. You're not if you're I don't recommend going in, in bad faith and saying, "Oh, hey, I'll interview you for a full-time job." You are right now trying to make a decision about what you're doing. So, if you in 3 months come back to those companies and say, "Hey, I'm looking for something like this," then that's okay. if you're upfront with them and say, I'm really not sure I'm into a full-time job, I'm really trying to build my business as a fractional, I'd love to talk to you, that's also okay. They make the decision about whether the downside is for you is you often get sucked into interview cycles instead of sales cycles, and they're seeing you in the wrong place. It's still a useful tool. You can still get work that way. At least in previous economies, job economies. I don't know what the current job market is. Yeah. But I would recommend, like any startup, because you are a startup at this point, understand where your money is, understand what your revenue needs are, understand what your expenses are, put a pin on your calendar that says on this date I need to make a decision, and on this date I need to drop dead, so that you know where that runway's burning. Right? You're not earning right now. You could be earning next week, or you could be earning in 3 months, or you could be earning in 6 months. If you can make the decision, you can say, well, because I highly recommend holding out for the high paying stuff. Right? It's served me well in the past, but it's not always easy. But if you come in and you're like, well, okay, I'll just take the low paying thing. If it doesn't move that runway needle, or if it just sustains it a little bit, and it takes all your energy away from building the business that would land you the higher paying stuff,
Yeah. So I've done some consulting in the past, and so that's also sort of what's felt like, I've liked that a bit more. So it's also sort of what's lending me towards the sort of fractional consulting types of roles. But there's one that's like one role now. It's like, I think the actual end customer is Plaid, but they're going through this other consulting company, which is basically trying to bring me on. But basically they were like, it's like, I would do like 150 to 200 an hour, sort of depending on the nature of the work. If it's like just straightforward delivery and I can I can sort of brain off, do it. And, I'll do it at like the 150 role end. And, I can continue to concentrate on other things, or, developing fractional stuff. But if it's like really, in depth, you want the whole, analysis, engineer, architect kind of guy, then, design, then it should be more towards that 200 end. And they came in at like 100. And they're like,
right.
And this after I told them the 150 to 200 range and said like, and so that was just like a flat no. And also discussing the work, it's definitely more of they're like a Python Monte repo. They need to like really figure out their whole, development process around it and fix a bunch of bugs and problems and a bunch of analysis stuff. And it's like, that sounds more like the $200 work. So
right.
So back with like, well, what about 150?
Right. So once you've landed your first or second project, let's come back and talk about pricing and figure out how to scale up your pricing and price differently so that you're not selling time. And so then you don't have that conversation about, well, is it this or is it that? And, here's what I could charge over here. And they keep thinking in their terms of time and instead focus on outcomes and value. Those are really fuzzy things, especially in the DevOps world. I understand that, but these are tools that you can use to help kind of try to figure out.
More like project type.
Yeah. So either project or, I mean, honestly, for myself, I end up just boiling things down to monthly retainers. But it's not about me being coming in and doing 8 hours of work, especially because this is a leadership or an advisory type of position. The work is not what I'm here for. You have people to do work, or we're going to hire people to do work. It's about making sure that the work is being done right, is in the right direction, and all of these things. Any work that I do is ancillary, right? It's not part of this. It's something, well, I'll choose to come in and fix this, or I'll pair with an engineer and get them through this problem, right? And so we start talking about that scope differently. It is hard to do that when you haven't landed anything yet, but it does depend on kind of how much runway you're willing to invest in figuring that out up front.
Yeah, no, but I mean, and that's where this was interesting because it was a 6-month contract, and it's sort of like, okay, this is could start to wet my feet of in back in the consulting world and all, and the fractional stuff potentially.
So how did you
But
find the lead?
online, actually said they reached out to me, through LinkedIn,
Gotcha. Cool.
or the consulting company did. So like,
Right.
they're wanting me to go through them to work.
Yeah. And though anytime you're going through an agency and you're not billing directly, you don't control the client, those are always going to be your lowest value project. Those are your I need to take work, I'm hungry projects. Now sometimes you can work with an agency. Either they bring you in alongside them, or even you can still be subbed out, but you're not being brought in as a staff augmentation, right? And so then it's more like you're working with a dev studio and not a staff agent, not a staffing agency.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it sort of feels like that, and then sometimes feels like, they just want staff aug, and then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a different thing.
Yep. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else? We know we're coming up here at 4. So.
More time, and we'll move on to other projects I should be doing. But I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me sit in and talk. If you don't mind if I come around some more, and
No, absolutely. That's what we're here for.
like to absorb information. And
yeah, and every week is different.
Yeah.
So cool.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for all the chat and conversation.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right.